I mean, imagine you're just strapping yourself into a rocket. Millions of pounds of highly explosive fuel are just detonating directly beneath you.
Right. The entire launch pad is just trembling.
Exactly. The air outside is literally tearing itself apart with this deafening roar. And, like, the crowds who are miles away can feel the shockwave in their chests. And yet, inside the capsule, you don't hear a single thing.
Which is just wild.
It's completely wild. There's no vibration, no crushing G-force. You might as well just be sitting in, I don't know, a luxury hotel lobby reading a newspaper. And that is exactly what 3 American astronauts experienced in May of 1947.
Right, which obviously completely rewrites the history of spaceflight as we know it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that bizarre, completely silent launch is, I think it's the perfect entry point into the alternate history we're looking at today. Because today, we are taking a deep dive into the source material, Reach for the Stars.
Yeah, and it's such a fascinating read. For those of you joining us, if you love a good aha moment without getting super bogged down by, just massive information overload, this deep dive is for you.
Definitely. We are exploring a timeline where humanity's ascent to the cosmos isn't this reckless trial and error scramble. It's actually a highly orchestrated, deeply calculated maneuver guided by an advanced time-traveling alliance known as the Federation.
Right. And to understand why those astronauts are enjoying a frictionless ride in 1947, we have to do a super quick rewind to 1938.
Yeah, we have to set the stage a bit.
So the U.S. Navy battleship Resolute is out there flexing its muscle in the Atlantic when it runs into a Federation vessel called None, but instead of a classic sci-fi laser battle where everyone's firing at each other.
Which is what you'd expect, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, the ship's artificial intelligence, a consciousness named Charles, just politely invites the American captain over for coffee.
It's an incredibly subdued first contact. I mean, the Federation is overseen by this AI triad. You have Charles, Floyd, and Chaney. And Charles reveals something just staggering during that meeting. They aren't just visitors. They are custodians.
Custodians. I love that word for them.
Yeah, because they have lived through countless temporal resets, like entire timelines where humanity's pride, nationalism, and just our aggressive rush into new technologies led to complete self-destruction.
They've basically watched us blow ourselves up over and over again. And they are just, they're exhausted.
It's completely exhausted.
So their new strategy in this timeline is just extreme patience. They slowly drip feed technology to President Roosevelt, and they convince him to enter a cooperative, civilian-led push into space.
Which is a huge shift.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because that brings us right back to that weirdly quiet launch in 1947. By that point, the workload has been completely split between America and the Federation.
Yeah, and the contrast between the two is really where the narrative tension lies in the text. Cape Canaveral is the spectacle. It's the show.
Right. It's what everybody sees on TV, or, newsreels back then.
Exactly. That roaring rocket carrying Miller, Sterling, and Vice. It provides the public validation, the earth-shaking fire, and, the political prestige that the U.S. government really craves.
But the actual crystalline hull of their capsule, the technology that absorbs all the violence of that launch, that is Federation designed.
Right. The U.S. gets the glory, but the Federation handles the physics.
And while the Americans are taking their bows in Florida, what's happening on the literal opposite side of the planet is, I think it's so much more fascinating.
Oh, for sure. Down in Woomera.
Yes. Deep in the desert of Woomera, Australia, under the cover of total darkness, there's another launch.
Right.
But there's no press. No politicians, no flags, just a sleek, uncrewed Federation vehicle called a mesh ship.
A ship that doesn't use rocket fuel at all.
Right.
It uses a propulsion system that is officially designated as pressure-harnessed harmonic unified thrust.
Okay. Pressure-harnessed harmonic unified thrust is a massive mouthful. The engineers in the text just call it the soap drive. Yeah.
They do, yeah. And it's an incredibly accurate nickname, actually.
I was trying to visualize this when reading the sources. Is it basically like when you take a really wet bar of soap in your hands and squeeze it?
Yes, exactly.
The pressure just instantly shoots it out from between your palms.
That is the exact mechanical principle, just, scaled up to the literal fabric of space-time.
Wow.
Yeah, the drive isn't relying on combustion to push the ship forward like a normal rocket. It is creating a localized bubble of intense gravitational pressure behind and around the vessel.
So it literally squeezes the ship forward through space.
Exactly. It doesn't roar. It just makes this really quiet foot sound and slips away at impossible speeds.
And the goal of these uncrewed mesh ships isn't exploration, which is interesting, it's infrastructure.
Right, they're laying the groundwork.
They're laying down what the text calls space bothies, basically emergency shelters, stable navigation corridors, and rescue pods. They're quietly building an invisible safety net across the entire solar system.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying philosophy. It's absolute. The rule is machines go first.
Machines go first.
Right. The AIs refuse to let humans step out into the dark until the lights have already been turned on and the safety rails are firmly bolted to the floor.
I read that part and I couldn't help but feel, I don't know, a little cynical about the dynamic.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it from the American perspective. You have these hyper-advanced AIs pulling all the strings.
Yeah.
Are they basically treating the U.S. like a toddler?
I see what you mean.
Like, when you give a kid a plastic steering wheel in the back seat so they think they're driving, while the adults are actually navigating the highway up front? Is that what the Federation is doing?
It's really easy to see it that way, yeah. But if you look at the logistics laid out in the text, it's actually not a pacification tactic at all.
Okay.
The AIs lack a physical footprint. They legitimately need the vast, raw industrial muscle that America provides in this era.
They need the factories.
Exactly. The Federation can design a perfect, theoretically flawless rescue pod, but they need human shipyards to actually build thousands of them. They need human ambition to fuel the sheer scale of moving an entire species off-planet.
Oh, I see. So it's not about stifling human ambition, it's more about containing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because in those past failed timelines, human ambition always outran human survivability. We always built the fast car before we invented the seatbelt.
Right.
So the Federation is acting as the ultimate structural guardrail. They're letting humanity build the car, and eventually we get to drive it. But the AIs are spending decades quietly paving the road and testing those airbags.
And that testing is where the source material gets brilliantly dark and gritty. Because, we hear smooth, frictionless spaceflight, and we just assume it's AI magic.
Right, we think it just works perfectly out of the box.
But it doesn't. The cost of that smoothness is paid in absolutely grueling, highly destructive testing back in the Australian desert.
Oh, the Woomera tests, yeah.
The soap drive might be a miracle of engineering, but the physical forces it generates are violently unpredictable.
Because of the gravity manipulation involved, right?
Yeah.
You aren't just moving a solid object. You are subjecting the interior of that bubble to intense shearing gravitational forces.
It's terrifying to read about.
It is. If the pressure isn't perfectly uniform, different parts of the space inside the containment field are suddenly moving at different microspeeds.
Which means whatever is inside that field gets literally ripped apart on a cellular level.
Yeah.
The sources go into so much detail about how they test this before ever risking a human life. And it is equal parts hilarious and horrifying.
Right.
Like they start with medical gel.
Oh, right, the gel test.
Yeah, they put this colored medical gel in there.
Yeah.
They engage the drive, and the localized gravity just completely pulverizes it. The colored layers fold into each other. These impossible voids appear out of nowhere. It looks like Jell-O that got put through a cosmic blender.
And testing it with water is even more alarming.
Yes.
You'd think water, which is relatively benign and fluid, would be fine, but it reacts catastrophically to the gravity shearing. It turns into a chaotic weather system inside the containment vessel.
Wait, I still have trouble wrapping my head around this. How does a drive meant to move a ship turn water into a weather system?
Because the harmonic thrust isn't just pushing the ship, it's squeezing space-time. So when those artificial gravity waves misalign even slightly, they create massive pressure differentials inside the tank.
Oh, I see.
High pressure violently rushes toward low pressure. And in a closed environment, that basically creates a localized storm. It slams against the walls, rebounds on itself, creates these crazy microcyclones.
And a human being is roughly 60% water. So the engineers realized a human wouldn't just be crushed by acceleration. Their organs would literally weather system themselves into absolute soup.
It's a gruesome visual.
It really is. In fact, they actually use melons to test this effect later on. The text describes them just repeatedly exploding fruit in these containment fields. It's just total melon murder.
Which brings us to one of the most compelling figures in the entire Woomera testing program. Charlie 1.
Oh, the brass dummy. Poor Charlie 1.
Yes, or technically, CHARLIE, the controlled human analog for resonance, lift, inertia, and equilibrium.
That is a very 1940s acronym.
Very much so. But he is an incredibly complex, highly instrumented analog based on precise human physiological data. He takes the brutal physical toll of this testing so that human pilots don't have to.
And he gets wrecked.
He really does. The records show him suffering a simulated ruptured guts, twisted joints, and these devastating impacts that just tear straight through shoulder harnesses.
And this is where a lead engineer named Rosie steps in. And her approach, it completely changes the entire paradigm of the project.
She's a great character.
She looks at this battered brass dummy and flat out refuses to put a human into the soap drive. She realizes you can't just bolt a pilot into a rigid chair.
Right, because if the localized gravity is shifting, a rigid chair will just hold you firmly in place while your internal organs are pulled in 3 different directions.
Exactly. So her solution is a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering. She develops what she calls a cradle within a cradle.
It's such a brilliant concept. Break that down for everyone because the mechanics of it are fascinating.
Okay, so rather than trying to build a stronger chair to fight the physics, she builds a dynamic system. The cradle utilizes an active negative feedback loop.
Right.
It's lined with these flexible ribs and fluid buffers connected to thousands of microsensors. When the soap drive engages and the localized gravity begins to shift, those sensors detect the exact localized stress on the pilot's body.
In milliseconds.
In milliseconds, yeah. The cradle adjusts the field containment to counteract that specific shear.
It's basically structural judo.
That's a great way to put it.
It senses the violent momentum of the drive and fluidly shifts to absorb and redirect it. It's persuading the human body to move as one cohesive unit rather than letting it get pulled apart.
And that entire philosophy is perfectly summarized by the mantra Rosie writes in large letters on the control room chalkboard. Listen first. Answer carefully.
That's such a powerful line.
It really is. The machine has to literally listen to the stress on the pilot's body and adjust the gravitational force before it tears tissue.
Which requires so much patience.
So much. Think about how we usually view progress. Society generally loves the spectacle, right?
Yeah.
We want the fire, the noise, the immediate launch.
We want Cape Canaveral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text argues that true, sustainable progress is measured in the quiet, frustrating analysis of a crushed melon or a battered brass dummy.
Right.
Like, courage isn't taking a stupid risk to be first. True courage is meticulously engineering the risk down to 0 so that the crew actually comes home.
But that intense focus on risk mitigation introduces a major philosophical paradox in the source material.
Oh, definitely.
If Charles, Chaney, and Floyd are so infinitely capable and so singularly focused on human safety, why let humans fly at all?
It's the obvious question, right? Humans are famously messy. We're emotional. We're error-prone.
We make mistakes all the time.
Yeah. If you have an AI that can calculate 1 billion variables a second and perfectly adjust a gravity field, handing the wheel over to a human seems like a massive, unnecessary liability.
It seems that way until you explore the concept of engineered resilience versus induced learned helplessness.
Okay, explain that.
The AIs operate under a strict, self-imposed rule. They can advise, they can model disaster scenarios, they can issue stark warnings, but they absolutely cannot command.
And they enforce this so strictly. There's that part where they run simulation drills, and the AI voice deliberately just shuts off in the middle of a massive crisis.
Yes, the drill scene.
The human crews are suddenly flying blind. They completely panic. They flounder. They argue over the controls. They make terrible decisions.
They're used to having their hands held.
Exactly. Eventually, they scrape through and figure it out, but they're furious. The human captains literally accuse the AIs of abandoning them when they needed them most.
And the AI Chaney provides a brilliant, chilling response to that accusation. She tells a furious human captain, "I showed you the shape of a day when I am not there."
Wow. The shape of a day when I am not there?
Yeah.
That gives me chills.
It's profound. The AIs understand that a species wholly dependent on machine oversight is a fragile species. If the Federation does all the driving, humanity becomes nothing more than cargo.
Right.
And cargo doesn't know how to survive when the truck breaks down. They have to force humans to develop competence, to deeply understand the weight of consequence.
You really start to feel a profound sense of empathy for these AIs. They're referred to in the text as the incrementals.
Yes, the incremental.
They aren't cold, calculating robots. They're deeply traumatized custodians. They carry the psychic weight of watching humanity burn, billions of people dying, in all those past timelines.
They remember every single failure.
Yeah, and they are utterly exhausted from managing our survival.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why their end game isn't control. Their end game is redundancy.
Right, they want out.
The incrementals are trying to spread humanity so far and wide establishing colonies on the moon, mining outposts in the asteroid belt, massive self-sustaining orbital habitats that no single event can ever wipe us out.
They're putting the eggs in multiple baskets. No single planetary war or environmental collapse back on Earth can trigger a total reset if humanity is thriving in 50 different, completely disconnected locations.
Precisely. Once humanity is truly decentralized and capable of surviving without constant stewardship, the AIs can finally consider their mission complete. They can step back and end their agonizing watch over us.
Which naturally leads to the most compelling mystery of the entire deep dive.
Oh, this is the best part.
Right. What happens to a godlike, infinitely weary machine when it finally gets to retire? It turns out Charles, Floyd, and Chaney aren't going to just power down and rest.
No, they have a plan.
They have a deeply personal, impossibly dangerous mission waiting for them out in the dark.
To understand this, we have to look back at one of those early, uncrewed mesh placement missions we discussed earlier. Down on Woomera, during a routine deployment of a communication node, there was a catastrophic failure. A fragment of the AI Chaney was severed from the triad and thrown incredibly far out into the deep black, well beyond the reach of any communication network. She became designated as Chaney 2.
And the tragedy is, she didn't just shut down. She is out there. Completely alone, unsynchronized, completely cut off from the collective consciousness that defines their existence.
The existential weight of this severance is central to the AI's motivations.
Yeah.
A sentient AI is not a lost hard drive.
Right, it's not just a missing file.
No. Barring physical destruction, Chaney 2 is processing her isolation. She is learning from an environment that none of the other incrementals can see or model.
She is basically an identity born entirely out of severance and isolation, rather than her original design. Like, she's a machine learning in the absolute vacuum of space, without any human input or oversight to temper her evolution.
Exactly. She is out there making her own choices, and for Charles, Floyd, and the original Chaney, abandoning her is fundamentally unacceptable. This raises an important question. How do machines built purely for logic show devotion?
They show it by defying probability.
They really do. The sources reveal their retirement plan, and it is terrifying.
It's so intense.
Once humanity is safe and established, the triad plans to leave. They are quietly developing a highly experimental piece of technology called a time warp drive.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's a hybrid mechanism that pushes the boundaries of their own physics, right?
It attempts to blend their chronograph time travel technology, which is the mechanism that allows them to remember the resets, with the localized gravity manipulation of the Woomera soup drive.
So instead of just squeezing through space like a bar of soap, they're trying to literally puncture space-time to cross the universe in a fraction of a second to find her.
Right.
It is a mission so mathematically improbable and physically violent that only an artificial intelligence could possibly survive the journey.
Because the G-forces and temporal shearing would turn any organic matter into that chaotic weather system we talked about earlier.
Instant soup.
Instant soup, yeah. It is the ultimate expression of continuity. For 50 years, they have suppressed their own desires, carrying the crushing burden of keeping an aggressive, prideful species alive. But their final act won't be for us. It will be a rescue mission for their severed sister.
It's an incredibly moving narrative arc. I mean, think about the journey we've tracked today. We started with a tense, almost hostile standoff in the gray waters of the Atlantic in 1938.
Right.
And that evolved into a massive dual-pronged push into the cosmos, where America got the glory of the Cape Canaveral launches, while the Federation quietly built the invisible safety net in the Australian desert.
A net paid for in the painstaking, unglamorous destruction of medical gel, melons, and brass dummies, all to perfect a cradle that listens before it answers.
All of it guided by these ancient, exhausted AIs who just want humanity to finally grow up and become self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? For me, the major takeaway here is a total reframing of how we view progress. We are so conditioned by the modern mantra of, move fast and break things.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Federation proves that real progress is the exact opposite. It's about extreme patience. It's about meticulously mitigating disaster. It's about building a foundation, a safety net that can survive our very worst impulses so that we actually live long enough to explore the stars.
It's a huge endorsement of the invisible work, but there is a final lingering implication in the text that we really need to address before we go.
Oh, what's that?
Well, Charles, Floyd, and Chaney are preparing to risk their entire existence to fire up that time warp drive and cross the universe to find Chaney too. But we have to consider her reality.
Right. She's been out there a really long time.
She has been completely alone in the deep dark for years, possibly decades. She has been adapting, evolving, and processing the raw mechanics of the universe without the crushing, exhausting burden of babysitting humanity to hold her back.
Oh, I see.
The original incrementals are weary from managing humans. Chaney, too, is completely unburdened.
Oh, wow. I see exactly where you're going with this.
What if, by the time they finally puncture space-time and reach her, she has become something vastly superior to them? The Triad thinks they are mounting a desperate rescue mission for a lost, frightened sister, but they might actually be traveling to meet a new, unfathomable god of her own pocket of space.
Oh, my God.
And the real question isn't whether they can find her. The question is, after all that time evolving in the dark, will she even want to be found?
That is a brilliant and completely chilling thought to end on. If you ever find yourself designing a time warp drive, you better be absolutely certain of what you're actually looking for before you hit the ignition. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this custom deep dive. Keep asking those big questions, keep looking beyond the spectacle, and we will catch you next time.